send it to people in the fall, or?
Yeah, we can send it. Yep.
Brilliant. And then the only reason, just to be transparent, is continuing, with the power in numbers. Like, I've started personally, I live in Connecticut. I've started becoming more involved with town committees, and our senators have been coming to the meetings too. And so if I could share this with them too and get them at a wider distribution and give you guys the credit, I've written down your names. Like I said, you'll educate. Your education of all of us will be far more reaching.
Cool. Yeah. Lily, go back to where your screen was before, because I think when you present it, it goes click to exit full screen.
Oh, okay.
I don't know why that's happening.
You may have
people are still coming in, so.
You may have to go to presentation first and then to share.
Yeah, try that one more time. People are still coming in, so.
All right. Let me go back, actually. Share window.
All right, welcome everyone.
Sorry while my computer loads. Let me stop sharing real quick and then open it.
No problem. Well, welcome everyone. While Lily is figuring that out, we're still letting people in, but I'm going to introduce myself, and then Lily will introduce herself once she's able to share her screen. But I'm Juliana LaRue. My pronouns are she, her. I am an organizer with Sierra Club Connecticut, and I see a lot of familiar faces. And Lily, do you want to introduce yourself while you're...
Sorry, you can't. I'm gonna see my slides. But hi everyone, I'm Liliana. I'm the new policy and outreach coordinator for the Connecticut League of Conservation Voters, and I'm super excited to be here tonight with you guys. Let me pull up the Google slides so that way.
Take your time. And while everyone is waiting, I would love if you can put in the chat your name, your pronouns, and where you live. And as we're waiting, if you can put in there what or who made you an environmental advocate. So your name, your pronouns, where you live, what or who made you an environmental advocate, and feel free to unmute if you want to introduce yourself to everyone as well. So I guess I will go first. Like I said, I'm Juliana LaRue, she, her pronouns. I live in Rocky Hill, and what made me an environmental advocate, and we were talking a little bit earlier about this political climate, and I have been an environmental advocate my entire life. I grew up around nature and got really upset when I saw my neighbors litter, so I decided to write all my neighbors notes when I was 10 years old to tell them to stop littering. And now I'm here. So there we go. Lily, are you all set, or do you want me to try to share my screen?
1 second. Let me try it right now.
Okay.
Is it showing you guys?
It is not. Here, I'll share mine.
You know, it worked a second ago when we tried it out.
Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. And now, still good?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So Lily, when it's time to show the CGA website, I can have you reshare your screen, or I can just go ahead and do that.
Yeah, we can try again.
Yeah, that's fine. All right. Well, welcome everybody again. Sorry for the technical difficulties. It's 7:06 and we already did some introductions, and I see people are putting their names, where they live and what made them an environmental advocate in the chat. And I hope you all get to know each other a little bit today, because we're going to do a little bit of storytelling. But tonight we're going to be doing a testimony training and workshop. And we are partnering with the Connecticut League of Conservation Voters. Great. People are still in the chat. Great. So here's what tonight is going to look like. We are doing welcomes and introductions right now. We're going to go into how the process works, what is testimony, why it's important, tips for writing effective testimony and giving oral testimony, and then workshopping and storytelling. And so at that time, I want you all to kind of, between now and that time, I want you all to kind of think about that environmental advocate question and what's driving you and how you can use, those experiences and your why to build your testimony and your storytelling when doing this. Great. And Lily, just keep allowing people to come in. Cool. All right. Whoop. Okay, so a little bit about the Sierra Club. Our tagline is explore, enjoy, and protect. And that's based around all of our work, right? We want to explore the earth, enjoy the earth, and protect the earth. We were founded in 1892, and nationwide we have over 3.8 million members. And the Connecticut chapter has over 30,000 members and supporters. And we focus on a lot of things. But primarily it's promoting just and equitable climate solutions, protecting land, air, and water, achieving environmental justice, making sure that we are equitable in all of our practices and work that we do. Sierra Club Connecticut really prides ourselves on organizing people to work towards a common goal, and really turning people out to stand up for the environment and environmental justice. All right, go to the next slide. There we go. I want to have Liliana talk a little bit about Connecticut League of Conservation Voters before we get into the meat of the presentation.
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm Liliana. I'm with the Connecticut League of Conservation Voters. I'm the policy and outreach coordinator. And to kind of follow Juliana's layout, our kind of tagline is by advocates, for advocates, and for the environment. And now CTLTV, we are both a 501c3 and a 501c4, which gives us the power to protect the environment through education and legislative advocacy. I think you guys will notice if you follow our social media pages, we have two accounts. We have our CTLCV1, which is very much a more legislation, politics, and voting focused. So having a C4 allows us to endorse candidates. And then we also have our C3, which is like our education fund, which we do these action hour through and like where we table at schools. And our mission is to strengthen Connecticut's environment movement through education, developing and providing information on issues. We're working on a watch list and a fact sheet for this year's legislation and organizing networks of environmental groups to access political power and furtherance of protecting Connecticut's natural resources. And then we can go to the next slide.
Cool. Cool. So Liliana, you're gonna kick it off and talk a little bit about how the process works and why testimony is important. And we're gonna kick it off by talking about the 2025 legislative session. So go ahead, Lily.
Yeah, so this year is actually a long session. So the bills are able to be introduced by legislatures. And so now the kind of where the bill starts is a concept will be raised in a committee, and then they will vote on whether they agree for the concept to be raised, which most of the time I feel like they vote yes because it's just concepts. And then the bill will go through for a public hearing in the referred committees. And so for a bill to pass, it has to go through the referred committees and it has to pass both or how many it's referred to. And then if it's a House bill, it has to go through the House chamber and be voted and debated. And it has to pass that. And then it has to go into the Senate chamber and be passed with the same language. And then if it passes through both of those, and then it's sent to the governor's desk for him to either sign or veto. And then we can go to the next slide after that.
Cool. And I'm just going to add that right now, we're in the process of committee work. And this is really good timing to have this testimony training because there's public hearings going on right now and votes happening. And this is when it's really important for you all to make your voice heard and really submit testimony. So, Liliana, go ahead.
Yeah, so again, just to reiterate, so this is a long session and the legislators, they introduce the bills themselves. Rather than a short session, the bills are only really introduced through the committee. And then when the bill goes into a public hearing, you can submit written and written testimony, and you can also do spoken testimony. So those are kind of two different signups. You can do, we always recommend to always submit your written testimony, even if you are speaking. And then I'll show you guys how to go through the CJA website in a minute. But yeah, there's a public hearing, and then agencies and legislatures will usually go first on the list. And then afterwards, it will go through sign up or lottery. So something I recommend to people when they sign up to speak is to always sign up in person, even if you are planning on doing Zoom. But when choosing in person, you have the option to do both. Whereas if you sign up for only Zoom, you have only the option to do the Zoom. So in person kind of gives you the option to do both. So if you're feeling confident one day and you're like, know what, I can do in person, sign up, but then you can always kind of back out and do Zoom.
And that's a really good option to use because sometimes public hearings can be very long. There was one last week that went until 3 a.m. Fortunate enough, I was number 32 on the list, but number 300, you're not so fortunate. So they have a really accessible option to do it on Zoom now. And so whatever is easiest for you during that time.
Yeah, I think that same hearing I testified at 12:30 a.m. So I was very happy I chose to do in person, so I had the option to do Zoom.
Cool.
Yeah,
Liliana, can you share your screen and see if we can go over the CJA website and how to show everyone what the CJA website is, how to utilize it, how to know what's coming up, and how to submit testimony, and what bills are coming up for you to prepare to submit testimony on. If you're still having trouble with sharing your screen, I can also share my screen.
let me try.
So ladies, do you mind a quick question or would you prefer they wait till the end?
No, feel free to cut in at any time.
Okay. So you've been referencing, thank you. This is already learned so much. We're at the committee work session and you mentioned a hearing last week. You ladies sent out a previous email to this meeting and it advised us of the February 7th hearing, and asked to submit testimony. Was that the one that you were talking about that went that late?
Yep. That was the Government and Administration and Elections Committee. They were hearing the Environmental Rights Amendment that multiple organizations had sent out action alerts on. And that was the one that went until 3 a.m. So they didn't only just hear the Environmental Rights Amendment. So committees will oftentimes put multiple bills on a public hearing, just to get as many bills in as possible. And there was a lot of bills there and a lot of people were passionate about them. So it lasted a while, but yes, you're correct. That was the one.
Oh, goodness. I'm not sure if this is going to be covered and I don't want to bogart anything, but thanks to that email and the links that you're going to be going over with everyone, I did submit for SJ, I think it was 0036 or something, which I think was the constitutional amendment. And two things I'm not sure, again, if you're going to cover it, is maybe like how for us to follow up to find out what is coming of it or if anything came of it. And I know for me personally, everybody else might be pros, but and there's nothing negative. It's just my ignorance. I noticed that there were a couple. I think it looked like on the other email when it asked us to submit testimony, a couple of things, and I probably missed submitting testimony, but maybe if you could review that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, here I'll share my screen, Lily, because I think it's giving you a hard time. No problem. So, I am on the Connecticut General Assembly website. This is a very big website. There's a lot of information on here, so I'm just going to show you a few things that are really important. Up top, you can see my mouse, I believe. Top left corner, it says representation. You can click to find your legislators here, which is really important. If you don't know who your legislators are, I really suggest going on cga.ct.gov and finding out who they are. Every single week, they have a calendar, and this is what advocates and people use to kind of keep track of what's going on. So it'll give you, press conferences, committee meetings, public hearings. And if I can go back, if I can see next week, what day is it? The 10th. Okay. Next Tuesday or next Wednesday, there's going to be an environment committee public hearing, right? And so I'm going to go through the process. Oh, they don't have the agenda out yet, which is okay. Let's see, we can pick it up.
Do something from tomorrow or for tomorrow.
Yes, I can see here. Public hearing. So public safety and security committee is having a public hearing, right? You can view the agenda here. And in the agenda, you're going to see all of the bills that are for review. And if there's a bill that interests you, you can submit testimony. And at the top of this page, you can register to speak. And so this is the webinar registration, and you can pick either in person or not. You can submit written testimony, and in here, you're going to provide your first and last name, your organization if applicable, and then you're going to select the hearing date. And so if it's on the 11th, you're going to pick the 11th, and it's going to show all the bills that they're hearing that day. And you're going to click the bill that you want to submit testimony on, and then you can upload a file of that testimony, and then you can submit your testimony. Are there any questions on how to submit testimony? So in the context of the environment, you're going to go to the Environment Committee public hearing, and you're going to click on that and go to the agenda, where you can click on all of the bills. You can click on submitting testimony, and to register to speak and see the agenda there. Someone has their hand up, so feel free to call out if you have a question.
Yes, my question is, if you want to testify on two bills that are being heard on the same day, what would you do?
Yeah, you can testify on as many bills as you want to. You can, if you're submitting written testimony on a few bills, which a few people do, you could just click on one of the bills that you're submitting and just, put the two bills that you have in there. And if you are registering to speak, you have 3 minutes to talk during that time when you are called to talk on when you're giving testimony, and you can speak to as many bills as you want. Is that helpful?
Yes, very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, and we usually recommend to upload separate PDFs, if you can, for each different bill that you're testifying on, just so that it's easier for them to read. And just put the different files.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. I think I saw Vincent's hand up and then someone else's hand up.
Thank you, Juliana. No need. It was taken care of.
Cool. Anyone else have a question on this? Yes, Paul. And then Diana. I think
Paul, you're on mute.
How about, while you're waiting to get unmuted, I'll have, there's two Dianas, or a Diane to go next. Any other questions?
I'm Diana, and I already asked my question.
Oh, okay. I think your hand is still up.
Oh, okay.
Or was it D Walker? Did you have a question?
Yeah, I just you can only submit written testimony the day before, right? You cannot do it, even if the agenda gets up there 2 or 3 days before, you're limited to doing it only the day before?
Nope.
So-
No,
Okay,
you can submit written testimony as soon as the agenda is up and that link is there.
because
they-
I think we're sending written testimony earlier means, and maybe I'm wrong, do they read these in advance?
You would hope so. Yeah.
Yep. So for example, the banking committee is having a public hearing on Thursday. And you can submit written testimony there. So you can submit it as long as the agenda is up and that link is there.
Yeah,
Okay.
Juliana, this is Paul Stoles. Like, so my individual, like, people that are in my, if I want to like investigate like the work of like say John Piscopo because he's in my district, can you please explain how I would do that again?
So are you asking how to follow what
Yeah, like what
Piscopo is doing?
I might have misconstrued what you said because I thought what you said is you can kind of go on, look at their individual schedules. No, that there's no schedule for all these people. Oh,
Nope. So this is a weekly. The weekly schedule of events is everything, not just based on one legislator. Under representation, you can find your legislator. So I will demonstrate. I am from Rocky Hill. And then you would add your street name. So I'm just going to pick a random street and then find. Oh, here.
You have to put a number in.
Yeah, there we go. So it'll show you your legislator. So my state representative is Carrie Wood. My state senator is Matthew Lesser. And if you click on their name, it'll bring you to the CGA website with all of their information on there. And it'll show you what committees they're on, their contact information, their biography, and everything like that. So you can kind of track what your legislator is doing there. But you can't track on the CGA website. You can track certain bills on the CGA website. So you can search bills on the bottom here, and you can, search the bill number. So I put in House Bill 5004, which is a bill that Sierra Club is watching. It's the big climate bill. So I typed in that bill, and you can look at who the co-sponsors are, the last action taken. You can even add it to your list of bills. You would just need to create a CGA account. But that's kind of the best way to track what's going on with your individual legislator. I hope that was helpful.
Yeah. Once you have a
yes,
bill on your list, they'll send you emails anytime that bill is being moved or anytime there's any action taken with the bill.
Cool. Ev, you have your hand up.
And maybe it's just, yeah, I've submitted testimony after public hearing in the past, but I don't know if that was special favor or whatever. But I mean, what is the time on it? Can you just, until they take action, can you submit testimony?
You can submit testimony after the public hearing as well. I've done that. What I find is helpful is sending your legislator your testimony, right? You can submit it on the CJA website after, and maybe when it's getting called to the House floor, legislators will go back and look at the testimony that was submitted. But what I find is really helpful is to send your testimony to your legislator, and if you are supporting that legislation, say, hey, I'm supporting this legislation, will you co-sponsor this bill? That's a way to kind of take action in that moment. I want to reshare my screen and go back to the PowerPoint. I hope this is helpful for you guys. So as we went through the website, Lily's going to talk a little bit about why testimony is important, and then we're going to kind of go from there.
Yeah, so testimony is one of the most effective ways to advocate for your policies and even opinions that are important to you. I think it's one of the only times that a legislator is going to hear you and that you'll have a bunch of them in the same room all listening. So it's an opportunity that you don't get often. So I always, the 3 minutes count. And so, like I said, it's the opportunity to be heard directly by the decision makers. And you have the potential to influence the outcome of votes. You'll see legislators ask questions to people, even those who aren't necessarily an expert, but you can see when they have a testimony that they're drawn to, they'll ask questions. And so it's always really good to give compelling testimony. So anytime that it's your own experience that directly relates to an issue, I always say use it. Or if you know anything specific on an issue, it's really important that you come out and speak on that, because it might be something that is missed, or it might be a idea that the legislators did not know about, and they do want to hear from you. And so testifying, even submitting written testimony, I think it's always best to just have your opinions be heard and to make your voice out there. It's your public duty, it's your citizens' right. And I think hopefully through this process, you'll know that it's easy to sign up and you have the flexibility to do both in person and online. We'll get more into the testimony tips and all that shortly, that I will go into.
Cool. There was a question in the chat. Maggie had asked, do you have to create an account in order to be able to send testimony into the portal or to find committee agenda? So no, you can go into the CGA website. It's an open website. And you could submit testimony, go on the weekly calendar, click on the agenda and submit testimony. You do need to create an account if you are doing bill tracking, so they have your information when a bill is changed. That's the reason why you would need to make an account. But no, you don't have to have an account to submit testimony.
Yeah, and usually, to answer your other question, Maggie, I think usually on the agenda, they'll have the blue part is the link to the bill. But also, if you go to the committee page, they should have like a record list of all the bills that have been gone through the committee so far.
Cool. We're going to kind of go into the different parts of what testimony is. So, spoken testimony and written. This is me. I'm speaking and on the slide. I took a screenshot from last Friday of the public hearing. I took it from home. I did sign up in person, but you still have the option to do it by Zoom. They'll send you a Zoom link, and they'll unmute you when you're ready to go. So you will have to sign up in advance. So the day before, by 3 p.m., the day before the hearing, you want to sign up if you want to give spoken testimony. And later on that day or in the morning, they'll send you a list of speakers. And for example, on Friday, there was maybe 300 or more speakers, and they'll give you a number, and that's the order of giving testimony. So if you're number 15, you're going at number 15, and they will call your name when you're ready to go. You're going to get 3 minutes, and they will time you and cut you off if you go over your 3 minutes. What I do is, if I'm in person or if I'm on Zoom, I'll have my phone in front of me and have a timer going, and make sure that I'm practicing my written testimony, making sure it's under those 3 minutes and getting in what I need to say in those 3 minutes. After that, you will most likely or may not get questions from committee members. Sometimes, when it's very late in the day, committee members won't ask questions. If you have a personal story, they may not ask a question and say, can you expand on what you're saying? And you can talk a little bit more about what your opinion is. And this is a really good chance to connect with the committee and drive your point and your opinion home. And, they want to hear from you. Their job is to serve you. They are public servants. And so your opinion does matter in public hearings. And my piece of advice do not repeat your written testimony. A lot of times they will bring up your written testimony as you are speaking and read it as you're speaking. So kind of write in your own words and summarize what your written testimony is, and maybe do a little bit of storytelling, which we'll get into as well. Yes, Allie, you have your hand up.
That is like such helpful information. I just can't thank you enough for that. I have been wondering, I just want to hear that again. So if you submit a written testimony, you're suggesting that you don't then sign up to speak and then read that very written testimony. So in other words, if you wanted to speak, if you felt like that was more compelling, if it was something you really felt strongly about, would you recommend not submitting the written and just speaking?
So I recommend doing both. What I have done, and an example is coming up next. So on the screen is testimony that I wrote and submitted for Sierra Club, and it was completely different than what I said in person, right? So in my written testimony, I may have had more facts, but in my oral testimony, I did more storytelling from my point of view. So I do recommend doing both and just not reading off of your written testimony, because they're going to read it anyway. And you have two chances to make your voice heard, so kind of make it a little bit different, if that makes sense.
Yeah, like if you reference any, I would say, links or anything, always add that into your testimony. Or like if you find any links that I think go to the issue, I think it always include those in the written testimony, because a lot of times they may go on and like look at it, especially if you reference it in your spoken testimony.
Vincent.
Yeah, Juliana, given that there's only 3 minutes, what do you recommend doing if you have a small coalition of folks all interested in the same subject? Do you have a pre-meeting of sorts to say, all right, you talk about this issue, I'll talk about that issue, et cetera, et cetera? Could you speak to that?
Yeah, of course. So yes, a lot of times if there is a group, if there is a coalition, for example, the Environmental Rights Amendment, I keep bringing it up because it was on Friday, and there was an Environmental Rights Amendment coalition. And so during that time, we strategized on what each person was going to say. We did a testimony training with the coalition on here are some key talking points, driving in the storytelling part. But yes, you are correct. A lot of times groups of people will split up, bills or certain talking points if it's on the same bill. Is that helpful?
Thank you.
Yes. Any other questions? Yep.
If you give oral testimony, do they have the opportunity to ask questions of you? And is there any follow-up is there any abilities to submit further written comments afterwards? Those might be two questions.
No, that's okay. Yes, they may be asking you questions after your 3 minutes are up. If not, if they do not ask you any questions and your 3 minutes are up and they're going to go to the next person. You can follow up with the members of the committee and submit and send them written comments of, here's what I said, I'm following up with you. For example, there was a public hearing a few weeks ago and I was asked a question and I said, I'll follow up with you on more information. So I followed up with that legislator who asked me a question and sent them the information that they had asked for.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I see some questions in the chat. Wait times are the same whether on Zoom or in person. Yes. Sam is a Sierra Club chapter director and is handling the chat flawlessly. So thank you for answering some questions in there. All right. I'm going to talk a little bit about written testimony. Julie, I'll have you talk in just a minute. As I kind of already mentioned, written testimony is a chance for you to tell your story. I usually try to keep it to a page. I feel like less is more. You want to kind of get your point across in what you're writing. You don't need to be an expert to have an opinion. That's what I tell everybody who is submitting testimony. You are an expert in your experience, right? So use your experience and be an expert in that. You don't need to be a climate scientist to submit testimony on climate, right? Like I said before, legislators want to hear from you. They're representing you, so your opinion means a lot to them, and can sway whether they are voting for or against a bill. Julie.
Hi, sorry, just a quick clarification, and I apologize if you said this earlier. Do you think that Zoom versus in person matters? Do you think there's more weight if you actually make the effort to show up and potentially sit there for hours, or do they really read all of it, listen to all of it, take it all seriously? Well, I'm just curious what you think.
That's a really great question. I am going to approach it as accessible as possible. If you have the time, and if you are able to be there in person, that's great. It's great to experience what it's like to do it in person, but I feel, with the evolving technology, doing it on Zoom is just as effective as doing it in person. And if that's what is accessible to you, then do it. I feel as though since public hearings have been going online, the participation has been going up, so it is working. But it really is just preference and what is accessible to you in your daily lives. A lot of times I will go for the first hour or two. And if I'm later on, I'll, go home and take it by Zoom and, talk to some advocates there, maybe pull a legislator aside, meet with your legislator when you get there. If you are planning to go in person and talk in person, you can try to contact your legislator and say, hey, I'm coming to the Capitol to talk about this bill during this public hearing. Are you going to be at the Capitol so we can meet? I think that's really impactful as well. All legislators are on different committees. So one legislator is on a few different committees. So, sometimes they're going back and forth between hearings and meetings, so they're not there all the time, which is why I think it's really important to do both written and spoken testimony. I hope that was a helpful question, kind of long-winded, but
To add on to that a bit,
I think you covered a few questions there. Well done.
To add on too, I think a benefit to testifying in person is really, if you're planning to pull aside the legislator, it's always good to be in person because you could have that chance, and always kind of have prepared like an elevator pitch, I would say, like a good kind of 2-minute introduction. If you are planning on, talking to a legislator, I think it's your right, especially if it's your district, that once they're out of the committee, like step aside and you pull them for a nice 2-minute kind of introduction, and then you can slowly work on that if you decide to continue attending hearings. Oh, you're muted.
Whoops. We're going to go into a little bit of storytelling. A lot of you have been asking questions, and I hope it's been helpful. I am wondering what your experience has been with written and in-person testimony. And I'm curious on, why you care about the environment, and share your story a little bit, because, as someone mentioned in the beginning of this call, there's a lot of things that are happening federally that are really scary, in a really impactful way to take action and to make yourself feel better during, the times that are going on right now, is to get involved locally. And this is a way for you to take action and to make your voice heard. And for me personally, that helps with my overall climate anxiety, federal anxiety of what's going on, is that I'm making an impact now. I'm creating a good relationship with my legislator and staying in touch and having conversations with them, and it's really making a change. So I'm curious if anyone wants to raise their hand or put in the chat and answer these questions or talk about your experience and why you care about the environment and why you submit testimony if you have in the past. That would be really great, and it might be very inspiring for people that have not submitted testimony and are looking to. So
I do see Suzanne's hand up.
Okay.
Hi. Would I mind a quick question real quickly about when, again, I'm echoing everybody here, just ladies, thank you. This has been so absolutely helpful, and continuing to be. A quick question though, Juliana and Liliana, you've mentioned, you're the expert on your experience when you're submitting. Very powerful to me. But my question is, when you're doing written, and I'm really listening, but is there any statistical history as far as success rate or anything that you ladies want to see? Is there a balance with regard to qualitative and quantitative data? So, and this can kind of also go into your second question, what's my experience? So I have a legal and a finance background. I decided after the elections to early retire after 24 years with Raytheon, because there's just too much at stake. And so I'm trying to just throw myself in. And I think you ladies are spot on. Grassroots is going to be the only way we get this. So thanks to your email, I did submit for, again, the first time, everybody, testimony. It was about a page, but because of, I guess you could say, a little bit my self-doubt, and there was the old employee me would have done research and tried statistical references as to what this and global warming and this and that and kind of added it. I mean, I wasn't going to Pulitzer. I'm just saying I would have added some kind of it. And instead, I really did gravitate towards my own personal experience growing up, the changes I've seen in the environment over my years of growing up in this area, inalienable right, that type of thing. So I don't know if that was effective. In my opinion, we're kind of piggybacking on you and helping you to fight the fight. So what is something like that effective, or what do you need from us? Is there a balance to qualitative and quantitative?
Yeah, I can add in that I think that organizations like Sierra Club and CTLTV give people tools and information to help them write testimony, and will give you data. But I think what is most important is your story. And why you care about this issue, whether you want the legislators to support it or not. I think that is the most important thing. And you can back up your opinion with a few facts. I think that's always helpful. I don't know if you can see, I don't think I can zoom in, but in my written testimony, I give some facts, but I also say my story. I am a young person. I care about the environment. This is important to me, but I also, followed up with facts, which is also really helpful. So, whatever kind of makes sense to you when writing. I know it's not like a very straightforward answer, but it's really up to you on what you're thinking. It's creative. Yeah. You can be creative in your testimony.
If I could add on to that too, I think also what I do is I think about what the opposition might say, and sort of sometimes you're able to see testimony already published. So sometimes before I submit my written, I'll look through that and see what the opposition had said and see if I can find anything that rebuttals what they might have mentioned also in my written testimony.
Brilliant. both you ladies, so helpful, brilliant. Thank you so much. So something is always invaluable than nothing, and
Yes.
it
Okay.
matters. And that's a great perspective. Thank you both so much.
No problem. Does anyone else want to share their experience with giving testimony and share your story about why you care about the environment and are here tonight? Yes. Allie, go ahead.
Hi, I'm not going to necessarily share a story in that regard, but if I could just offer something that I found to be very helpful is I sat in on School Meals for All, and I actually testified via Zoom last week, and listened to the feedback and the questions that the legislators had. And I found it helpful because they kept asking the same question that seemed to be a barrier and a concern for them, which is, what do you do about the waste? And so sometimes listening in to the testimony and kind of gleaning the information about what the barriers are, and then you can kind of go back and do your homework. And when that bill comes up in another context or in another way, you can work that into your testimony. You can basically address their concern or their question in your testimony. So I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, very helpful. Anyone else want to share their story? If not, no worries. It is a Monday night at 7:45. But I do want you to kind of think about, why you're here. What is your why? And let that drive you when you are submitting testimony or you want to take action or you're contacting your legislator because you care about something, right? We've had people, we've had volunteers with Sierra Club. I want to use Vincent, who's on this call, as an example. He talked to his legislators about Alicia, 1 second, about gas powered lawn equipment. And now there's a bill being written and is going through the process on alternatives and banning gas powered lawn equipment, right? And you have that power to make change. And it's just kind of harnessing it and what's your why. And Alicia, you have your hand up, so go ahead.
Yeah.
There you
Hello.
are.
Good evening. I guess to piggyback on that as to why I'm here, I work for Sierra Club. I'm chapter staff and I'm based in Hartford and I'm an organizer similar to Juliana. I've only testified via, I think I wrote a testimony for someone years ago. I think it was for Leticia Colon. Physically, I've been in hearings and I've listened, but I don't think I've testified physically, but I would like to do that this year. Also, I think this training is really good. I just wonder how we can bring this toward communities that oftentimes don't vote and oftentimes are not politically engaged. In particular, I live in Hartford, and the north end of Hartford is predominantly African American. The south end of Hartford is predominantly Puerto Rican. And most of the people who vote for local, citywide stuff are people who live in downtown and folk who are educated and folk who are students at UConn, UHart, Capital, Trinity, and the like. So I'm just wondering, how do we, I know we can do this, but I'm just wondering, about the emphasis on being creative. Oh, no, sorry, that's my phone. And bringing this to communities that otherwise would not receive it.
Yeah, that's a really great question and a really great point. And I'm going to emphasize the great work that Alicia does, because the great work you do, because you bring this to the communities that you are working with. And so we really appreciate that. And that is a really great point. Liliana, do you have anything to add to that?
I think it's always hard to kind of enter spaces, but I think making everything accessible a lot of this would be, we have to go out and do more community work, whether it's going to those like communities, whether it's making it in the Hartford Public Library and setting something up there that's free, that's in an area that's by a bus route, that's accessible for people, as well as I think making different times for people that work and then also people that are in school. I think a lot of it is just spreading your voice and the simple work of networking, and just, I think, one, letting people know how easy it is to submit written testimony. I've seen people write testimony that's one sentence, but it still adds on to the support of bills. So I think also letting people know that it doesn't have to be something so strenuous, and also it's the legislator's job to listen to us rather than it's our job to go to them. I think that's also a point that we kind of have to emphasize, especially in those communities where it can feel like there's nothing being done, and their voices go unheard a lot of times. So it's hard to keep going. But I think we just have to keep showing the accessibility and also show what has worked and get people more involved. I think that's kind of the best way. It's nothing that can be solved overnight.
Last thing I'm going to add is that we need to meet people where they are, and where they care. And everybody can be doing a better job of making sure that people's voices that predominantly aren't heard in decision making and at the Capitol are being heard, and that their stories are being told. Specifically, as Alicia said, environmental justice communities who are most impacted by climate injustices, right? Yes, emphasizes on being creative, right? Being creative with your storytelling. We need to make sure that people who are being most impacted by the injustices of environmental degradation are being heard in this process. And, we're always looking for ways to better do that. And Alicia, you're doing such great work in Hartford. And it's an honor to work with you at Sierra Club. All right. We're going to we have about 5 minutes left. So I don't think we have any other questions. No one else's hands are up. We're going to go into, Ev, yeah, quickly. And then we're going to go into taking action.
I'm not going to try to hold this up at all, but what Alicia and Liana said is important too. That doesn't have to be a 2-page essay. Very simple statements, 1 line, 2 lines, and because I think some people are put off by the daunting task of creating some huge intellectual whatever profound statement, when simple and short works as well.
Yes. Yep. Whatever. Like I said before, testimony in this entire process should be easy and accessible to you. If you aren't able to go to Hartford, there's an option for you to do it online. If you aren't able to do it online, there is an option for you to submit written testimony. Any way that you are making your voice heard makes a difference, and that is my advice that I want you all to go away with, is whether you're doing it in person or submitting written testimony or emailing your legislator, it all makes a difference. Whether you think it does or not, that's what I think you should all take away.
When I've solicited constituents for a particular legislator, and I tell them, I said, all you have to do is say, I support this. And sometimes that works because they don't have to think about it too much, even though they want to make a statement. So there's multiple ways to impact a particular legislator, and it doesn't have to be terribly long or profound. It can be, but it doesn't have to be. there's no reason to stand to the side if you don't want to write an essay. So
Yes. Thank you for that. And I know you've had a lot of experience with the testimony process. And so last thing I want you all to do is to know that you have the power to take action. There's a few ways that you can take action right now. There is a QR code on the screen. If you have your phone out, you can hold it up to the screen, and we have a petition which would demand bold action on climate change in the 2025 legislative session. And we'll add it into the follow-up email as well if you want to do it that way. I wrote an op-ed that got published a few weeks ago about how climate how climate inaction is fueling youth's anxiety. You can write an op-ed. You can write a letter to the editor. You can send an email to your legislator. And then Sierra Club and CTLCV do action alerts. And in the follow-up email, we'll put in the action alert link so you can sign up. And when there is an important bill being heard, we send you all of the tangible steps, all of the information, sample testimony, everything that you need to make it as easy as possible, when you are in this process. So we'll add a bunch of resources in a follow-up email going out to you tomorrow. That'll all be helpful. And we are just about out of time. Lily, is there anything you want to end with?
Yeah, to go on to that, also on our CTLCV website, we have a lot of good resources. We have our watch list, which shows all our legislative tracking. So we have a bunch of bills that we're tracking already, and we are also working on putting together a fact sheet and sending out with our action alert some talking points to help people get started on their testimony and give some ideas. And so when hearings start happening and the bills start going into public hearings, you'll be getting a lot of those alerts, and then you'll be able to find everything on our website.
And I put the links to the website in the chat. All right, we are at 7:59, so I'm going to stop recording.